Good morning. Hello and welcome to Avyan IAS Academy. Today we will be taking up a specific part of from our NET syllabus. We'll deal with one of the most important four tragedies of Shakespeare, that's Macbeth. For our UGC NET, we need to go into quite detail of Macbeth because questions usually from Shakespeare that are asked in your NET, they focus on the lines. On the lines, the lines said by also the minor characters. Remember, understand something that they expect as English graduates to have, some idea about Shakespeare. So if we are trying to talk about Macbeth in general, that wouldn't just be very effective to talk about in respect to your exams. However, before we go into the much more detail and nitty-gritties of Shakespeare and rather Macbeth to be specific, let me quickly give you an outline of what the play is about. This is one of the four great tragedies of Shakespeare. Out of and the other three tragedies are Hamlet, Othello, and Lear. So these four combined are the four great tragedies of Shakespeare. Also, as a matter of fact, Macbeth is the shortest known tragedy of Shakespeare, and it's also one of his shortest written plays. Now there are five scenes. Five. This is a 5-act play. So in the 5-act play, as you all know, there is a rising action in a play. Then we reach the crescendo. There's a rising action. Then there's a crescendo of the play, and then there's a falling action in a play. So for every play, the rising action, that is when the plot is forming, then there will be the peak or the crescendo of the play, and then there will be the falling action, that is which is the part of our resolution of the conflict. That's and most the resolution of the character in forming in forming a play or a novel or a drama. There are a few certain important elements that we do look at, and resolution of the conflict is one of the part of the same thing. So we slowly and generally build up the process. Then there are characters that come and act in the process, and then it reaches the peak, and then there comes a falling action, and the falling action usually is associated with the resolution of the conflict. Sometimes it could also be very anticlimactic, sometimes could be anticlimactic, or else it could just be the resolution of the conflict, like the hero meets the heroine. And if it's anticlimactic, it could just not be a happy ending, it could be something as a reversal of your entire action, or something that you it's not the way you expected things to happen, but it's rather the opposite way, as we can see during the time of for Oedipus. If we see, that's very anticlimactic, right? Oedipus blinds himself, so that's something very anticlimactic. We really don't expect such an ending for a king as great as Oedipus, but given owing to circumstances, that is what happens to him. So coming back to Macbeth, a 5-act play. We begin the play with one of the most iconic scenes in English literature. That's the Three Witches. The Three Witches begin with it's toil and trouble. So the fair is foul and foul is fair. This is one of the marking lines of the entire play. Fair is foul, foul is fair. So this marks the entire play, which means that nothing in Macbeth's world is what it should be like. So everything that is wrong is the right, and everything that is right is the wrong. So nothing is the way it should be. Everything is the hurly-burly. So these are terms with which we do associate the play. keep when you are reading the play, do look out for these terms, lines, and and the important lines in the play, because questions would be asked generally by asking you from the lines. It wouldn't be very on your surface. We have to read the play in detail in order to get to find out from where the lines have been taken. So fair is foul and foul is fair. This is how we see the three sisters, the three witch sisters sitting on the heath. So they are predicting a future for Macbeth, who isn't yet seen, that the Thane of Cawdor, would soon become the into Glamis, and then he would become finally the King of England. So all the thing would become the King of Scotland. Sorry, this is a play that's happening in Scotland. So this is how the play begins, and we haven't yet seen Macbeth, but we'll soon see that Macbeth has come winning the war for the then King of Scotland, that's King Duncan, and he is reaching the place where the three witches are there along with his companion Banquo. They have predicted that Banquo will become the father to the king, and Macbeth himself will become the king. Remember, these predictions at these very strategic times would play a lot of important role. We often say that Macbeth wouldn't have become Macbeth had these witches not predicted his future. Macbeth was quite guilty of himself wanting to become the king. However, remember that he was so scared of admitting the fact. He was not exactly scared. He was so guilty of admitting the fact that he wants to take away the throne from a real king, that's Duncan, as a usurper, that he dared not admit the same thing. It's like his shadowy double. It's very Freudian, because he's so worried about it that he does not want to even admit it to himself. But these three witches, they are almost like acting as his alter ego, and they are bringing out the fact that Macbeth wants to become the King of England, and also Macbeth wants to become the King of Scotland, and also they predict that Banquo would father a line of kings in the times to follow. That's how the first act ends, and that's the marking of the play. And as soon as we'll see that Macbeth reaches his palace, and there he is given a grand welcome for having slain the enemies, and the king is elated. The king, that's Duncan, is also Macbeth is also his nephew. So they are also related by blood, and that's why in the later times all the more Macbeth's crime would become much more pronounced. Then we get to see one of the very important characters another important characters in the play, that's Lady Macbeth. Lady Macbeth is often referred as the fourth witch in the play. Lady Macbeth is referred as the fourth witch in the play because we often assume that critics have often assumed that Lady Macbeth, had it not been for Lady Macbeth, Macbeth wouldn't have become this ambitious in his crimes, because had it not been Lady Macbeth, with her absolute lack of morality, Macbeth is someone who commits crime one after the other, but at the same time Macbeth is guilty of having committed those crimes. He is someone who has not been able to absolutely unburden himself of his unconscious or his id. But Lady Macbeth is somebody who is completely been devoid of all sorts of morality, who is someone who can happily bury the conscience and can move ahead. And Lady Macbeth is someone to whom we'll be attributing one of the few most famous lines in literature. For example, when Lady Macbeth says, "Come and unsex me," she is asking the spirits to come and unsex her. And she is someone who is a woman, but she doesn't want children. She doesn't want her, right now looking at them through the post-colonial lens or the feminist lens is a way of also looking at Macbeth through the feminist theories. That is, we'll come to that when we look at it. But now, since we are going with the plot, let us finish off with the plot first. And it's Lady Macbeth who constantly keeps on telling Macbeth and rather instigating him in order to murder Duncan and usurp the throne. So on the fateful night of winning, when the king Duncan visit Macbeth's palace, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, in order, they have decided it's among themselves that they would be murdering Duncan. So Lady Macbeth goes and tries to murder Duncan, but she finds an uncanny similarity between her own father and Duncan, and hence she cannot murder the king. And instead, it's Macbeth who has to murder Duncan. However, Macbeth has done the bloody deed, and he cannot look back at it once more. So he rushes off, and it tells Lady Macbeth that the crime has been committed. He has already killed the king. And Lady Macbeth is somebody who makes a devious plot at the end, and then decides that how the blame should fall on the guards and they should go scot-free. However, things do not go as it's planned, although they accomplish the murder. However, it's not without raising a few brows. The sons of Duncan, that's both the son, Fleance as well as Donalbain as well as Malcolm, they soon realize that Fleance would be Banquo's son. They soon realize that something is wrong, and somebody who has murdered Duncan would also be after them, so that they could usurp the throne from the actual rulers. That's in line. They would be the eldest son would be the next ruler. However, figuring that they might also be in some sort of trouble, they quickly escape Scotland. And what Macbeth does is he quickly usurps the throne and sits on the throne, and then he spreads rumors like his sons has murdered him. That's an unnatural of crime. However, remember that the sons are no fools. The sons have already gone over to England, and they have started acquiring their own strength and might in order to come and fight against Macbeth. In the same way, soon, one after the other, the nobles and the kings start leaving the kingdom, because it's, according to the play, Shakespeare was deriving most of his ideas from Holinshed's Chronicle. In Holinshed's Chronicle, however, it's a very different notation about Macbeth's rule. It is said that Macbeth ruled quite happily for around 10 years, and his rule was a time of prosperity for the Kingdom of Scotland. However, in the play, Shakespeare differs from this historical fact. Remember, Shakespeare took the ideas as plot lines, but he made subsequent and a considerable number of changes in order to adapt them. So we see that Shakespeare, he has as soon as Macbeth is on the throne, nothing is good there. There are widows being made, there are orphans being made every day. So soon after that, Macbeth's crimes, his passions knows no bound, and once again he soon tries to kill the other generals like Macduff, but instead he does not he cannot do that. He escapes, although his wife and children are dead. However, he manages killing Banquo, because Banquo is someone who is the first to have thought that it was Macbeth who had murdered Duncan. So in order to make his path smoother, it was important for Macbeth to remove Banquo from the kingdom. And as soon as Banquo is killed, but Banquo's son Fleance escapes. However, all these nobles at one point of the time, they together form an alliance against Macbeth, and finally they come back to attack Macbeth. And the witches had given 3 conditions under which only Macbeth could be killed: that a man born out of no woman, and only when the Dunned Hill moves to the palace would Macbeth be killed. And so these conditions are being fulfilled in a very odd way, like and finally it's like Macbeth is being slain. However, Lady Macbeth dies before that, because Lady Macbeth dies as she has been completely she was someone who was completely trying to bury her morality. However, that does not the human mind really doesn't operate that way, and soon she keeps on losing herself. And it's like a Lady Macbeth who had once said that a little water would wash us of this deed after murdering Duncan, is someone who at the end says no hands, no perfumes of Arabia could sweeten this little hands of mine. Lady Macbeth was someone who could also ask the spirits to come and unsex her. Lady Macbeth was also someone who constantly was instigating Macbeth about the fact that he should he should not worry about murdering Duncan, because he has done what was needed to be done. And Macbeth was so enamored by his wife, he had said that you should always give birth to male child, because nothing other than a male child would suit you giving birth to other than a male child. However, it is one of the point of departures in the play that Lady Macbeth and Macbeth do not have children together, and that is also one more reason that we attribute Lady Macbeth to be the fourth witch in the play. She is a motherless. She is childless. That is one thing. However, she is not just. She remembered that in the feminist lens looks at this in a very different perspective now, and they look at it like we often say that our traditional belief was that the idea of motherhood would be the idea of womanhood would be completed only with the idea of motherhood. However, Lady Macbeth, centuries ago, if she had when she says that I do not want to have children and I could just smash the head of a child, that's actually a gory scene. So that is one of the very that is why Lady Macbeth remains a focus of the feminists. Like, she is someone who chooses and is I wouldn't say brave enough, but maybe brave occurs with a little bit of positive connotation, but she is somebody who absolutely debunks the idea of motherhood, which was so very prevalent during her time. That is also one reason she is called the fourth witch, because she is childless. And the other three witches, in one of Banquo's famous dialogue, we get to Banquo says, what are they? Are they man or they are woman? They have beards, yet they look like women. So what are they? They are kind of sexless creatures. So the idea of sexuality for the witches is quite dubious. We are not very sure about in which gender we should place them. And Lady Macbeth is also someone who is feminine, who is a female, but in no way feminine, and hence the idea of making her the fourth witch actually suits. That is one reason. So Macbeth at the end meets his tragic end and is killed, and his throne is taken away, and his throne is taken away, and it's replaced with its original proper heir to the throne, that's Duncan's son. It's Malcolm and Macduff together managed to slay and take away Macbeth from there, and it's finally the play ends with the rule of peace coming back to the kingdom of Scotland. However, there are a number of things which we need. This was a rough plot line of the play. There are very important scenes in the play which we need to look at, like for the scene which we call the banquet scene, and the ghost, where the ghost of Banquo comes. This is the first time when Macbeth is slowly and steadily losing his cool around the murder of both Duncan as well as Banquo. So this is when he starts seeing the ghost of Banquo in the banquet, where he has promised that after being the king, he had promised a banquet, and as soon as the banquet is thrown, he started seeing the ghosts of Banquo and says that, who are you shaking your gory locks at me? That is, however, then he keeps on getting the apparitions of the dagger. Remember, he gets the apparition of dagger twice. That's once before they murdered Duncan, and once after he has murdered Banquo. Before he had murdered Duncan, he had seen a dagger coming towards him, and after Banquo's murder also he sees such a similar scene. So these are apparitions of his. They are actually the workings of his guilty mind, which is making him see the dagger everywhere. It talks about his criminal mentality, and at the end, Macbeth has plunged so deep into such deep headlong hedonism that there is no way that he can come back of it. The lines that Macbeth says are that he has steeped so much into his crimes that with his crimes and the blood in his hand could even make the Neptunus see a red one. So that's the proportion of his crimes. Just a few important ones are made in the play, but when we get to hear lines that some woman is being widowed every day and some children are being orphaned every day, we could understand the kind of rule that Macbeth was having in the play. However, that's not what history chooses to decide as. History says something different, that Macbeth was quite a good ruler. So that is the amount of Macbeth's hedonism. Then of course we have very famous lines from Macbeth. That is like when Macbeth tells, "Life is nothing, tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow." As Macbeth is walking towards the end, he could foresee his end reaching him, and it's no way that he knows that he can avoid the inevitable. Lady Macbeth is suffering from a disease where she finds blood everywhere. That is the first mention of what we understand obsessive compulsive disorder or OCD, because she is talking about the fact that nothing can sweeten her hands. She's constantly seeing blood everywhere. The Lady Macbeth, who had just said that this little blood means nothing and a little water will wash us of this deed, finally and in the end is consumed by something as terrible as an obsessive compulsive disorder of finding blood everywhere. However, Macbeth has been so hardened by all the crimes of his time that he says that she could have died at some another time, and he doesn't even care to visit his dying wife or even the dead wife. So that's how unnatural the end for this couple is. Both of them die. This death, which is not at all peaceful and not happy at all. This is not a wanted death. This is something that they had chosen and designed for themselves. Of course, being punctuated by the witches' prophecies at every point of time. So now let us go and find out a few questions which we had experienced or seen in the net question. For example, for net there was one question which was, they had quoted the lines, "If it were done when it is done, it were well. It were done quickly," are uttered by which, whom? Macbeth, Lear, Othello and Hamlet. So this is a line which Macbeth says just before he tries to murder before he tries to murder Duncan. He wants the deed to be done very quickly, because once Lady Macbeth fails, Macbeth knows that he has to kill Duncan in order to succeed in their plans. So at the end, it has to be someone who kills Macbeth, who is not born out of a woman. So it's Macduff who kills Macbeth finally, because that is a reference also that we are getting to the C-section, because that's how he was born. He was untimely reaped out of his mother's wombs. So that's how Macbeth meets his end, and now the tables have turned and Macbeth would be displayed as a coward. He's being called a coward, and also Macduff says that he would be people would get to know him as a tyrant. So that's how the play ends, and in the last act, in Act 9, in Act 5, Scene 9, we see that Malcolm is a rightful heir to the throne, and he gets to sit on the throne. That's how the play ends, and then we expect that Scotland will have a better rule. So also once a question came in net like stealing herself to the murder, Lady Macbeth calls on the dash to unsex me from here. And they had given the options: the spirit of hell, the angels of heaven, God, and no one in particular. So you have to choose which was the person whom they Lady Macbeth asks to come and unsex her here. So as you can see from both, from the three questions which I told you, that's like you will be asked questions by directly lifting the lines from the passages, or you can also be asked based on a certain particular criticism that is there based on Macbeth, like who's a critic who at first called Lady Macbeth as a fourth witch. So these are the things. I mean, just reading the play wouldn't help. We have to analyze while reading the play, and we have to look at the play at various lenses. Like there could be the post-colonial lens of looking at it. There could be a very important, that's a feminist lens of looking at it, because witchcraft and witch theory, this automatically brings the feminist theory in it, because you see, wizards are not supposed to be as difficult and as problematic as witches, but witches are supposed to be creatures. I mean, the Salem witch trials and a number of other witch hunting and witch trials which had gone all over the world has told us about the fact that how women are being killed just on the thinking that they are witches. So that is also one more important lens. So these are the few ways which we can analyze the play, and of course we need to go back to the previous year's question papers in order to find out what all questions also could be asked. But in general, from the Shakespearean plays, what we have is getting to the very close quarters of the lines of the important characters and a few trademark lines. No, they will not generally ask you questions from the first or the opening lines of the important dialogues, because those lines are generally known. So they would choose, if it's a long soliloquies, for example, Macbeth soliloquies are very important, and for those from somewhere from the middle of the soliloquies are where questions are asked. So keep reading and keep reading literature. Thank you. That's all for today.